Welcome. I'll be discussing the episode Computer Affair. We'll start with viewing order. Production puts it very early on as number 2, but release order is way down, more like episode 21. So which is better? There are a lot of very compelling arguments on both sides. It all kind of hinges on why is Straker being a grumpy little jumpsuit during this episode?
I know what happened. Now I want to know why.
Some of the arguments for early on. Confetti check A-OK probably just happened. So Ed is a complete mess and is just kind of lashing out at everyone. Most of the characters are new to SHADO. They just started the job and aren't quite sure what the dynamics are yet, and they don't trust each other. SHADO is still trying to figure out what their workplace vibe is, in a way. Some of the arguments for later. After SHADO running for so long and very little to show for it, tensions are running high, and that is why everyone is on edge. Commander Straker is simply overworked and stressed out. Gay and Mark have been working long enough together that they've developed serious feelings for each other. And then the most compelling argument, Mark pulls out a bottle of wine and mentions the year 1984.
1984. I wonder what it's going to be like in 20 years' time.
These are all in-universe reasons. And I think they're a great way to decide a rewatch order. But my question now is, what about first watch? Because if you're coming in, you've never seen the show, like I hadn't a few years ago, where does it make sense to put Computer Affair? I think number 2 is way too early. You don't know who these characters are. You're still trying to figure out what Commander Straker's leadership style is like. This is a terrible example of it. And then Mark and Gay are super sweet, but you don't know who they are yet. You're not invested in their story. You're just like, wait, what were their names? I would argue for a first-timer, put it more like halfway. At that point, you've seen more of Commander Straker, you know who the characters are, and your reaction is more like, they're just having a bad day, rather than, yikes, what is wrong with these characters? I don't know if I like them. Also, if it's early on and you're a first-time watcher, you're going to assume Mark and Gay's story will come up again. Like they're going to get another episode together. And they don't. Presumably that would have been season 2. I think if you put it more like halfway, you'll be less upset that like episode 2 was them and then that's it. This is just my personal opinion. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments. First timer about episode 15-ish. Rewatch order, go ahead and put it early on. Unless you prefer it later. How's that for definitive? But enough about viewing order. First off, we have some marvelous model work with the lunar modules, or as I like to call them, the koi ships. Headed to Moonbase, we get a full docking procedure. Within this episode, I think we have a little bit of everything. As Commander Straker puts it, everything that flies. A UFO, interceptors, Sky One, skydiver, mobiles, and more. There is something incredibly special about actual physical models versus CGI. I was watching A New Hope last night, and it was the special edition, and I'm sorry, it is just glaringly obvious when they insert CGI into the physical models. Like, Star Wars. That is one of the things I love about UFO. No CGI. We also get to see Moonbase having monthly audits.
Well, that about wraps it up for this month. I'll report a clean bill of health.
Now this makes sense to improve efficiency and make sure Earth is protected and all that. They are never pleasant. And you can tell, like Lieutenant Ellis is so nervous. She's practically shaking as she hands over the report, and they're awkwardly walking through Moonbase together, and Alec is like, yeah, you're doing a great job. We are doing our audit. Super awkwardly. Love it. It is so accurate. This is exactly what workplace reviews are like on both sides. No one wants to do them. The main plot line is introduced by a very simple act of Gay handing Mark his helmet and wishing him good luck.
Good luck, Mark.
And then there's a lingering shot on them, and then Alec kind of going. Those two are so off the charts adorable that he's just like, okay, something's going on. And director Dave Lane does a great job of showing it without being too heavy-handed, but you definitely get where the story is going. Speaking of cinematography, check out this tracking shot. They are really showing off the set design. From rapid-fire quick cuts between characters to slower but definite camera movement shots, I really like how this particular episode is filmed. Hats off to the transitions as well. Like this one goes from day to night by showing the moon and then all the way over to moon base, onto the screen. Really well done. And this brings us to the dramatic moment of the collision between the UFO and interceptor.
Interceptor 1 to base. Request new course.
1 to base. Request new course.
Control to Interceptor 3. Alter course
024.
Interceptor 1 to base. Request new course.
218.
It's too late, Lieutenant.
I really admire Lieutenant Ellis here. She literally has the astronaut screaming at her over the comms, and yet she is maintaining her poise. Interceptor 3, go to these coordinates. Meanwhile, in her earpiece, she's hearing just shouting. I would be so flustered if I were her, so it's amazing that she's able to keep as just steady as she is, and she manages to save two of them. Like, I get it, Ken. You were panicking. There was a UFO coming straight at you, but just let her do her job. I halfway wonder if he had been quiet, he might have been saved. I'm going to just throw that out there. She might have gotten him the coordinates just that 30 seconds sooner. I don't know. This is just a wild theory. All of this, of course, triggers the discussion. Can she be trusted in a command position when her feelings are engaged, as it were? And I absolutely adore the ending to this, where the computer itself admits she saved 2 out of the 3, when if she had gone by standard procedure that everyone thought she should have,
We would have lost all 3 interceptors.
You mean her decision wasn't influenced by emotion?
You tell me.
like we've all been there. You make a split-second decision. You personally think it's the right one, but there's some really bad fallout from it, and people get hurt. And only much later do we figure out, no, you did make the right decision, but at the time, everyone gets mad at you. We've stood in that office. I think this episode has one of the strongest endings of any on the show for an upbeat ending. I would say Square Triangle has the best ending. But Computer Affair, not only does everyone kind of accept that Gay and Mark might start dating, but we get that cute little smile from Straker when he's like, yes, it all worked out in the end. And Lieutenant Ellis was proven right all along. We take a while to get there, though. There's a lot of conflict in between. The look on Alec's face when the moon-based personnel are brought into Straker's office. It is so funny. He could not get out of there fast enough. He was just like, better you than me, bye! I was also really impressed by Mark here. He attempted to take full responsibility for the incident, not just to protect Lieutenant Ellis, but his whole team, really. And I just love how Straker is like, look, Mark, we know you're gallant and you're honorable and you're an awesome guy. That's why I hired you. But why did this happen? I don't need more proof that you're an amazing person. I already know that. How do we prevent this from happening again? So I can kind of see both sides here in that office scene. Lieutenant Ellis's civilian outfit here is just gorgeous. Because we see her in miniskirts so often that I love seeing her in a little pantsuit. It's so much more practical. Like you can actually bend over in it. A very personal reason why I like this episode as well is that we get a ton of skydiver costume close-ups. I'm working on a skydiver uniform, so I'm like, okay, where's the seam? How far down does the little shoulder piece go? As much as I adore Subsmash, they don't actually have that many good close-ups of costumes. This episode does. Oh, and did I mention my favorite skydiver captain is in this? Yes, Captain Carlin. All right, on to the psychoanalytic department. I want to know, what is this computer test that they're taking? Like, what are they doing? It seems to be some kind of a matching exercise. Or is it like a stress test that we saw elsewhere where they're responding to images with positive and negative? I want more information. They kept jumping to the interview, and I'm like, no. What is this computer test? As some of you know, I used to be a Dominican sister, and when I first joined the convent, one of the things that they put you through is extensive testing, just like in this episode. The interviews, the written tests, all of that. I still remember working with the psychologists and stuff during that time, and this whole sequence reminded me a lot of that. So it made me very curious about the differences in methods now versus when this was made, although they were trying to extrapolate the future as well. So anyway, I found it fascinating. I think the doctor here is Dr. Schroeder or something. I really want to study him. He's interesting. But what I want to mention here is he asks Mark in his interview, tell me the opposite of the words I say. And the line delivery when Mark says, love, is just brilliant.
Hate. Love.
I think I've sat back and rewatched it because I have to hear it over and over. He does it so well. The amount of emotion that pours out when he just says that one word, love. Right there, that's when he shot up to one of my top characters on the show. Meanwhile, poor Lieutenant Ellis is just getting more and more flustered and nervous, and she just becomes a mess.
Black. Bird. Blackbird.
And that's how they, of course, figure out these two have, as the Jedi like to call it, an attachment. But this being SHADO and not the Jedi Order, their reaction is, well, let's run it through the computer and see what the computer thinks about all this. And the results are not good. Alec, good for him. Go Alec. Is like, I disagree with the computer here.
It includes Mark Bradley and Lieutenant Ellis.
Your decision.
My decision. Without the aid of a computer.
He goes to Straker and is like, look, I'm going to put them on the same team and see what happens. And right here, Ed could have been like, no, I'm overriding you. But he didn't. He was like, we'll see what happens. The scenes between Alec and Ed in this episode are so tense, and it is brilliant. And I like that they're very different personalities that have different ways of working. And yeah, they clash sometimes. But if the team is homogenous, you don't get much done. So anyway, as we all know, Gay deliberately sends Mark into danger to prove that she can do it. And all is well that ends well. This is a solid episode that I can watch over and over. My only quibble is we never got to see where their romance went. I like to headcanon that they kept dating just very quietly and being careful that it wouldn't affect their jobs. Maybe they spent their Earth furloughs together, for example. The final section of this episode, Commander Straker is so desperate for answers that he tries an experimental truth serum, even though the doctors suggest not doing it on an alien. When I first saw this episode, I found it shocking that he would do this. Having rewatched the show several times now and spent enough hours in Ed's headspace, I get why he did it. And I like how flawed he is. We don't have a leader who's perfect and poster heroic. He's a real human being. And yeah, he occasionally makes mistakes and pushes too hard. But that just makes the show grounded and realistic. He always makes these bold moves, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Just like life. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode. Just please keep it civil. Otherwise, I will send Alec to loom over you in the comments, drinking whiskey and glaring. Interceptors. Immediate launch.